Welcome to the Fat Fueled Family Podcast, where every week Danny and Maura Vega discuss topics that help families live a healthy and active lifestyle with their little ones, including nutrition and training, peaceful parenting, education, and mindset. To stay up to date, make sure to hit subscribe on this podcast and check out the blog at www.fatfueled.family. You can also find them on Facebook and Instagram at dannyvega.ms, at fatfueledmom, and at fatfueledkids, and Fat Fueled Family on YouTube. Enjoy the show.
Hey guys, I want to take a minute to make a quick shout out to our sponsors, Optimal Carnivore. You've heard us talk about how important organ meats are. They're some of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. Now for people like me and my oldest son, Desmond, it's easy to eat things that turn most people off because if you tell us it's healthy, we're down for whatever. But for my other son, Dean and Maura, and I suspect a lot of you, not so much. You can make things like our organ meat burgers, but that also requires some effort, and you still may not like the taste. Optimal Carnivore sources 100% grass-fed organ meats from New Zealand, freeze-drying the organs and encapsulating them into convenient bovine gelatin capsules. Unlike a lot of areas in the US, New Zealand still has a lot of rich soil, lush greenery, and one of the cleanest environments on Earth. They currently have a grass-fed organ complex that contains 9 different organs, including beef liver, brain, thymus, heart, kidney, spleen, pancreas, lung, and gallbladder, and they have a grass-fed liver product. These products are perfect for people who are traveling or still trying to develop an appreciation for organ meats. Optimal Carnivore covers your bases at home or while traveling, and their products are 100% grass-fed and grass-finished and free of hormones, pesticides, antibiotics, and GMOs. The mission over at Optimal Carnivore is to make it easy for people to consume the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. They also plant 1 tree for every product sold, which helps the environment. Head to amazon.com/optimalcarnivore and use the code VEGASAFE10 to receive 10% off all of their products. Welcome to the Fat Fueled Family Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Vega, and I'm joined by my momnificent wife. Here.
He always has a new adjective for me.
Always got to have an adjective, and I stole that word from our guest today. So we're excited because this is one of our favorite topics. We're going to talk about education. We're going to talk about all types of stuff that's affecting our children. But first, let us introduce you to our guest. So Dr. Karin Jakubowski is a well-respected international influencer on helping kids live happier, healthier lives. She's touched the lives of thousands of families in multiple states with her ability to connect and help kids experience success from challenging behaviors. With a doctorate in educational leadership and nearly 20 years of experience in education as a teacher, assistant principal, and principal, we're actually talking to her at work. She's highly regarded as an educational game changer. Her insights have been featured in various media outlets, including the Washington Times and Delaware State News, and heard in multiple speaking engagements internationally, such as the National Principals Conference and as far-reaching as India. As an empowerment coach, she provides a framework for parents who feel helpless when their child is home. When their child is experiencing challenging problems at school or at home, to experience the happy life they always dreamed of having through utilizing her revolutionary problem-solving approach. Welcome to the show, Dr. Jakubowski. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Oh, we're so excited to get into this conversation. We always start off with a question. What is the most critical problem you are currently trying to solve?
So I would love every kid in my school and that I know to have their own mentor/school counselor.
Oh, wow.
Oh, we love
great.
that.
That's what I feel like.
Yes.
I keep finding myself saying that. Like every kid needs that right now.
Chills.
Yeah.
We it's funny you say that because our kids go to what would you call it? Like
I guess a private tutor.
It's an educational school that there it's like 5 kids or less. And it's very, very hands-on. And we were just talking about that. You know, that's kind of something that's a missing link where it's not so simple. It's not that easy where it's just like, oh, go get therapy or go like it really has to be a little bit more personalized. So I agree. That would be amazing. So needed.
Yeah. The other thing too that we talk about all the time, and it's not, we try to tell people this is not a moral judgment that we're making, but a lot of the time when you have a system, it's all about trying to manage children, and you have lots of children to manage. And so I love that idea, because anything that can bring more relationship, more customization, and just because we see, just like any system, people fall through the cracks. So we love that. We love that.
Everyone being seen.
Yeah. Love that.
Very cool. Well, all right. So, this is a big loaded question. So how would you say this last 2 years has changed, one, the educational system, and more importantly, what impacts do you think it's had on children's social development?
So pre-COVID, my psychologist, my school counselor, myself, year after year, we would literally look at each other and be like, what is happening? Because the mental health of the needs in kids is on the rise every year. We're seeing more and more needs. That was pre-COVID. So the fact that now I'm feeling like every child needs a mentor / school counselor just, tells you exactly where we're at. And I don't know about you, but literally every person I talk to who is looking for a therapist right now cannot find one. They are literally sold out, overbooked, on a wait list. Like, it is just...
Or even just getting services.
Yeah. Let's just start with that. So I'll come back to that moment of years ago when we were saying the mental health needs of our kids are on the rise, and what's happening to provide for them, because I think we're going to kick to that later on. But what we really saw when the pandemic hit, through it in the first 6 months and then into the first school year, walking into it a year ago, we saw a real shift with staff and even myself, where whatever situation or issue we had with a child and you're trying to work it out with the parent, whether it's like, can they read more? How are they doing academically? Things like that. It all shifted to the first 3 things I would ask a parent of anybody that I would talk to was, how are you? How's your family? Is there anything I can do to help you? Because everyone was facing something that was impacting them in a new way that it wasn't what we knew, and everything was so unexpected, and there was no, well, it still feels like it's unexpected. We're not sure what's going to happen next, right? There's no certainty. And so that was one of the biggest things I saw shift in myself and with my staff, that before we tried to find out anything or ask for anything, or usually in the past, it would have been more academic focused, right? Because when the school is calling, like, my kids must be struggling, maybe socially, academically, what have you. But this time I put that in a second position, and it was like, how are you? How is your family? What can I do to help and support you? Because you never knew what stories were happening. And we've always had things happening in our life, but now it was like I just kept that very wide open. And I found that I would just pick up the phone more to call people. Like, if people would email me, because everyone was so uncertain, like, are we doing remote? What's happening with the school year? And I would just pick up the phone and call people. And they always appreciated just talking through the millions of questions they had, because it was such new territory for all of us. So really, for me, the shift that I saw, it was just taking a more personal approach and really going down to those basic level needs, where I hadn't functioned like that in that way in my years as a principal. And this is my 10th year as an administrator. And then of course, when the kids came back, we had to be more in tune with their needs socially and mentally and emotionally, more than we ever had, especially if your kids come in and we are in an area where the kids come in and they generally can behave well, and they have a lot of prior background knowledge. So, we kind of you just walk right off of that and you go in and everything's expected. And that was like the biggest pivotal change for myself and my staff.
Yeah. I'll say this honestly, you just gave me something that gives me hope, because hopefully, educators and administrators, anybody who's, in any type of role like that, can model that. Because I've been saying this to adults, we're in the fitness industry, and what I keep saying, because I went through it for the first time ever, depression and all that. And I remember when I came out of it, finally, people were like, well, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? And so what you're doing to me is so good because, you know, someone's probably going to have to prompt you to really be like,
Yeah.
face it, you
Sometimes
know?
you're just in it. You almost don't even
And
realize it.
and you're just either you're distracted because confusion creates, you know, division a lot of the time because people are more, you know, reacting versus responding to things.
Yeah.
And so there's so much division, and, you know, just bringing it back to like what I've said, this is a very simple, practical. I'm picking 5 men in my life that I can stay accountable with because men are notoriously bad about sharing stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey man, how are you? You know, and
Yeah.
that's a change for me because I don't like speaking on the phone, but you know, like a lot of the time it's going to be needed because it's what's going to be uncovering those things. And I'm sure you've had a lot of more tears, a lot more emotions coming
and
out.
just stress and
but that's good.
just the stress levels are just, they were elevated for so long, you know? So it's like everybody's kind of just like used to like running off that high stress, you know? So
Yeah. And some of us walk around like no one really cares what I'm going through. But the minute someone's like, wait, how are you? Like, can I help you with something? And literally, not that I actually probably could help them with possibly anything, but I forced myself to ask that because when someone asks me that, even if they couldn't even do anything, for me just to be like, oh my gosh, this, that, and the other, da, da, da. All of a sudden I actually felt a little better just because I just got it off my chest. And it could even be that. And it opens up that door where like, you know what, we're all in a difficult time and we're all facing like one step away from something, another tragic thing happening in or somebody that we know happening it too. And it just kind of like leveled the playing field. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm this or you're that. It's like, what do you need? We're all in a place of need. And it's kind of been a rule of thumb in my life. I don't know where I picked this up from, but when I personally don't feel like if I'm going through like a rough moment or a down time or a down day, I've actually just flipped it, just been like, who can I do something nice for? Who can I write a letter to? And I've just done that over time. I'm like, and it always pulls me out of where I was because
it's almost impossible. Yeah. It's because you're like in that state of just giving and serving, and it's just it brings you back quick. Yeah. I love that. I love that phrase, connection before correction, that you use. Can you explain that for our audience?
Yeah. So I'll kind of use the school environment where, you know, kids get in trouble. They get sent to the assistant principal's office. I was an assistant principal for quite a few years, you know, and we'll talk about my collaborative problem solving approach in a minute. And that's like a mouthful, but really what it is just connecting with the kid. And when I would have an upset kid in my office, first, I don't talk to them until they've gotten calm and in control of their body. I just let them get it out of their system because anybody upset, no one can think straight anyway. So we're not even going to start talking about anything. So I leave them alone and I keep them in my peripheral because no one likes being stared at either. And I just, you know, I would look at them and be like, you look like you need some more time to get calm and in control of your body. And that's just like this phrase I end up using all the time. And then, oh, you look calm and in control of your body. Like, hey, I heard you, you know, like kick the kid on the playground. I'm like, what's up with that? And using an open tone of voice like that without being demeaning, without talking down to them, the kids slowly start opening up and they're like, oh, someone's not going to yell at me, or, oh, I'm not, you know, going to feel worse. And I always feel that every kid who does something bad or wrong really feels bad inside somewhere. And sometimes they don't look remorseful. And I never hold that against a child. And I will never talk to them or make them feel worse because I know deep down somewhere they actually do feel bad. And that is not my job responsibility to make you feel worse for what you did. So I appreciate this process that I learned 12 years ago. And I've practiced and worked with it because it really synced with what I believed and how I would want someone to treat me. How about I just start there, right? And when I was a kid, I actually lied, stole, cheated. Like I was a bad kid. Like, and I grew up in a great family. Like,
oh yeah.
And I felt bad sometimes. Like, I hated that. And I think because I associate with that, I never want a kid to feel that way. And so I'll say like, you know, what's up with that? And I really let them share. And sometimes, a lot of the time, it's a story about a minute, an hour. My mom yelled at me walking out the door. We'd rushed to get to school. Like It was few times that it was really about, oh, I just turned around and kicked somebody. No. And so that's that connection piece where are we taking the time to find out the story? Behind every behavior, there is a story. And yet it is difficult in the school day, the school system, pacing. Teachers are told what they got to keep doing, don't get behind. That is the hardest thing for us. Time is not our commodity in the educational system. But when you can find school counselors or assistant principals, administrators, people in the school that can take that time with that child and be like, so what really happened there? You find out who else was at play, or maybe they interpreted something and it really upset them, and then now they just walk to the next situation and that other person was there and got the brunt of that, if you will, because hurt people. And so you got to go back to, well, what really happened there and how can we help you? So we really, and what I did was a couple years in as assistant principal, I ended up coming up with this idea where I would play Uno with all the kids in the school that had the most write-up behavior referrals, because I wanted to connect with them and do something fun with them. Because they were just kind of treated like the bad kid a lot because they just end up doing the bad things and then everyone sees them that way. And I wanted them to have something to look forward to in school. There is good in all of us. And so when I would connect with them that way, then when I had to correct them, I had earned their trust and they would learn from the situation, which is what we want anyway. And you don't learn when you're freaked out, being yelled at, upset, crying, emotional. They won't learn. They'll actually have to go through that situation again to learn it, because you don't learn in that state. And so that's that connection before correction, which my school psychologist ended up saying one day, and I was like, yes, that's it.
I know. And I love stuff like that, like something simple I could just pull from. Because even as parents, like this is so important. This is so important in parenting. You know, we have 2 boys, and man, I grew up with girls and boys are wild. So I really had to learn just a different way. I can't get on their level like up here. You know, you have to really get down and really, you know, get down to the bottom of it and help them really manage those emotions and coach them through it instead of just immediately punishing even, you know, because I mean, we're not perfect as adults. Shoot, I lose it sometimes, right?
Yes.
So, and I would like the same grace. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah. I mean, also it's like, I think, you know, one of the for anybody who hasn't done this before, you're going to learn that they're going to get mixed signals, you know, and they're going to think that the consequences are not happening anymore because of the connection. The consequences still have to happen, you know, it's like, because if not, then we don't have, like, think about it in our own personal lives. Like if we're not putting up those, what's the word that I do for you? The things that I do for you, like when I defend you against, you know, people that are close to you. Boundaries, setting boundaries.
Setting boundaries.
Yeah, you know, so like I was put in her life to do that. Yeah. So it's so good. And like,
and that's getting down to that, to those types of things. Like, why are we acting out this way, right? So like maybe someone has trouble setting boundaries and they need help being, so yeah, I'm sure we're going to get to it.
Because the person that they lashed out at could have just been the wrong person at the wrong time, you know, and it really was, because I know in my situation, the situation that got me kicked out of middle school and I had to go to anger management, was I had my best friend at the time who was much bigger than me, who kind of like bullied me. And then I took it out on somebody else. So I can look back at that. And I think it all just comes back to what you're saying with the counselor. That costs money. You know, and it costs money to, for example, it costs money to buy more expensive, better quality things instead of getting things that are just that we're going to throw away and consume. I think it's all related, because we tell people all the time, you have to take an active role in your child's education, you know, whether they go to school, whether you homeschool like we do. And so whatever that looks like, you know, I think people should understand that this is, you know, I'm just looking at the counselor thing. I'm like, that's going to cost money, and let's fork out that money because it's worth it. You know, that's where the rubber meets the road. So, all right. So I think this is a great segue, because we've had several. Oh, did you want to say something?
No.
Okay.
No.
We've had several people on to talk about, changing our perception as parents and as educators when it comes to those challenging behaviors that you're talking about. So what would you say to folks that truly want to connect with their children during these difficult moments? I mean, I guess it's, you've mentioned some of the things. Is there anything that we missed that's just going to help them, any other like connection before correction? I like that. Any
other tips and tricks?
The most biggest thing. So I teach parents this in a course because I break it down for them. And each week I'm like, you're going to try this with your kid this week and come back and tell me the stories next week. And little by little, as you slowly practice and fail forward, the first thing, if one thing a parent could walk away from this today is practice not talking to your kid when they're upset and you're upset. It's twofold. You don't talk to your kid when you're upset. If you're emotionally charged, you feel that heat rising, we all know it. Our heart starts pounding. Oh my gosh. We used to host international students and they would get in the car for school late and make me late for work for an important meeting because I'm the assistant principal. And then I became the principal and I was like, don't you understand? And like you, I was like, I yelled one day. I was so upset and you regret it, right? We all do. But if you could just practice and just start being aware and catching yourself and slowly over time commit to yourself, I will not talk to my kid when I am upset because it never ends up good.
Yeah,
never.
Exactly. Never.
You have to get calm and in control. And that's where we practice this breathing. You take these deep breaths. If you took 10, what we tell kids, count to 10. Why? Because your brain will literally be in a different state of mind in 10 seconds when you are highly emotionally charged. You will say and act something completely different in just short 10 seconds. So, hey, if that's all you can think of, give yourself 10 seconds before you tell your kid something when you get upset. And the second thing, if you can, it can't be every situation because we're not a robotic, perfect life. But as much as is possible, don't talk to your kid about something that they did wrong or bad or acted wrong for when they're upset and not in control of their body. And that's really hard for us because sometimes we want to just be like, I didn't teach you that. Why did you do? Like we take it so personally that we feel like we've got to say and address it in the moment. And this is the hardest thing. You've got to like table it. It might be 30 minutes. Kids come in from recess, sent to the principal's office because they just kicked the kid and they're crying and snotting and it's lunchtime. And I'm like, even prisoners get to eat. That kid's going to go eat, but they just did X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And they're going to go eat and they're going to get calm and in control of their body. And then when they're calm and in control of the body, I will come back around and be like, wow, you kicked Johnny. Wow, what's up with that? Well, he had it. And all of a sudden the story comes out. And this is what you were saying, Danny. You get to the root of the problem. In the minute when you're upset and they're upset, you're only dealing with that surface, what I just saw just happen. But this process gets you to the root. And don't we want to know really why my kid did what they did? What's really going on? Like, Danny, if someone had taken the time to really find out what you had gone through and then started working from there, look at all the beautiful healing and repairing and building and tools and learnings you would have come away with. And this process teaches kids to problem solve. And that's what we want them to become as adults, right? But no, kids are told so much these days because we just protect them so much that they don't know how to think on their own. You ask them to come up with a solution for this problem and they're just like, huh? What? Because they're not used to it. So there's so many beautiful things in this. Did that answer your question? Now I'm like,
no, absolutely. And I want to,
that's perfect.
This is, I want to ask if you don't mind sharing, is there, what are the age ranges of your school? And there's a reason why I'm asking that.
So I'm in an elementary school. So I work with 5 to about 11-year-olds. And that's what this process is that I personally have had experience with, even though I know it's taught to parents in general and educators in general, K through 12.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so happy you said that because, look at the news.
It's pretty much my kids' ages.
Look at what's happening. Like, this is why, for example, it reminds me of what we do with our children with money. Like, I'm letting them make these little mistakes now. Like Desmond,
yes, I'd
when
rather
he was
let
really
them make
young,
cheap mistakes.
He would buy dollar store toys as soon as he would get $1 or $2.
Fine.
And it's like, okay, now he's learning that lesson
and it breaks.
And it breaks.
And it's not good.
But like, look at when we get to high school, now we got to deal with testosterone and estrogen
10, and he doesn't really.
No, but I'm
he'll
just saying,
save his money more now, like he knows.
Yeah.
Not
but
to
it's the same thing with these things, because if we don't I'm so happy you said that. We have to get them really young, because these things get very, very, this is a disease that grows, and it becomes,
it can get so bad. Yeah.
When that mind is at a certain level where they can pick up a weapon and things like that. You know what I mean? That's what I'm thinking about. So, I mean, these are, again, it comes back to us. We have to take responsibility, and we have to be active, because, all of these things, if we're not being mindful, these things fester, and the problems are much bigger than kicking a kid.
And the teenage years are already tough because of the hormones and all of that. So it's like, if we can teach them, like, I call it the toolbox, I'm like, what are all these tools that you can put in someone's toolbox? I mean, I needed them. I need them as an adult. So it's just these coping mechanisms, we all need them. And it's, instead of just punishing, like, it's, of course, the natural consequence and whatever, of course, we have to suffer those consequences as well, but with understanding and showing them and coaching them through that. So,
and a really great question that you can ask a kid when maybe they do something that bothers someone else, or they did something and it impacted and affected someone else in an unpleasant way. I always say to the kid, what do you think we could do to make this right?
Oh, I like that.
Problem solving.
I actually like that, because my little one is tough. He's one.
And that's hard for, parents, and I speak often through the lens of the teacher, but like a lot of times teachers, like, they need to apologize. And it's like, is that all we know? Because that's how we've been raised. That kid may never apologize to you, but I'm going to ask him what he can do to make it right. For him, it might be, I'll write a letter. I'll do something nice for them. Maybe they will say it. But I really love giving them that power to come up with that on them, because maybe that's what they feel safest to do. Sometimes we're forcing kids to do stuff they're just not even comfortable or ready for. And that's like, okay, maybe you're not ready today, but when do you think we could do something to make this right? And I love that. And then that gives them that perspective taking, which is another skill that they all need to learn for life.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. It reminds me, I made a mistake the other day, and she knows, my younger one, she understands them better because she's more similar. They're more similar in that way. And so I was like, he's not coming out until he apologizes. And I felt bad about it.
And it's like hard for him, like, it's hard, it's hard for him to communicate, and I get that. So I love that you said that about the letter, right? Like, for me, that would have been something that would have been more comfortable. Like, I'm that person. Yeah. Do you know?
They might not know. They might not know. So you can suggest things.
Like, I would have been that kid that I'm like, So yeah, I love that. And just putting it on them to come up with an option that feels right for them, but they're still taking that step to, have that repentance and and show that person that they do feel sorry, So I love that. Moving on to like our next topic, and I guess this all, is all goes together, but knowing how much of an impact it's had just on everyone's mental health, really. How can parents and children these days navigate this complicated world of social media? I know I'm kind of like, I don't want my kids, like my kids are, what the ages that you deal with mostly. We have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. So, I'm like, no.
Yeah, they have accounts that we
manage, and then like, they'll let them scroll the when I'm like around,
and they'll do the content, and then we'll post it, But that's another thing that I think it's parents aren't involved, and it's like, what the heck is going on? And there's
just no
boundaries. First of all,
right?
Also, the brain development, certain content that they consume, their brains aren't ready for. So, I mean, I didn't even think to go that way, because when I think of that question, I think of like the way, comparison,
or even just for like for me, it's more of like even the attention spans.
Yeah, that too.
So yeah, definitely from that comparison standpoint, the beauty standards, like the filters, all that kind of stuff. And then also, I know for me, it's like the dopamine driven, that part of it where it's like, this can be like so addicting to where you don't even notice it. And you can like, it can be a really detrimental thing for all.
You can't live without it.
Yeah. If you can't live without it, it's a problem. Right.
Yeah, I interviewed teenagers on my podcast because their teacher started every class with 3 minutes of a mindful silence. He didn't tell them anything. No, it's not this Buddha thing, no music playing. You don't have to sit like anything. Like, you're just quiet. These girls were like, that was the most powerful thing. And they developed their own practice from it. And they literally said it's what got them through COVID. But you know what they also said? The minute I wake up in the morning, I check social media. Who said what? They are so addicted to it. They don't even know how to live without it. They can't get off it. It's just, now it's just what they do. It's almost past the point of like, I have a thought to do it. It's just, I do. So then we back it up to our kids, right? And everyone's like, what should they be on? How long should they be on? You know what? I'm sure there's 100 million people's opinions of it, but you're the parent and you're the one who's just going to have to decide what makes the most sense for you.
Yeah.
And it's going to be different for each person because we're so individual, But if you monitor however you're going to monitor or influence it, but I always ask the parents to just observe their kids. You'll observe when your child's behavior is and isn't what you're used to seeing. And then to either, draw back a little bit, or that where they are, it's okay. But the time and the frequency is what turns into a habit. So it's just how much you as a parent are going to allow it. I don't know that we can't not allow it because it is just so infused in our every.
And you almost want them to get used to it and like then build that internal self-regulatory system as well.
Yeah. But then if you can, help your child with the mindfulness practices that, is something we were fortunate enough to bring in a coach and teach our kids at school, then they start becoming aware of their feelings. Oh, wow. Like, my heart's racing here. I just need to take a deep breath. And they can actually start self-regulating, because if you can teach that self-regulation, then no matter what situation, I mean, gosh, we're driving down the street and there's traffic and we're like, stressed out, right? So there's stress and anxiety in things that aren't even, getting into the whole social media world. But that's what's so beautiful about also these mindfulness lessons that I teach kids, because you're teaching them to be aware of their senses and then giving them tools of how to bring themselves back into that regulated, calm state where they can think clearly, they can, communicate and have a thoughtful reaction, and that's not full of emotion that they're going to end up regretting at a later point. So yes, monitoring as much as you possibly can, and watching how much frequency of the time and how often they're on it. And I think you just have to observe them, because it's not going away, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like when we were kids and we would play out in the yard when we got home and build forts and played in the creek. There was like the best memories of my life. So I don't know if that helps answer.
That does help. And just an experience that I actually have, just from my experience, I have my two boys, and I love what you say, like, it might be different for everyone. Well, it might even be different between each child, because I know for me, like, your kids, and like, they're very different, so I know, like, my oldest, I've taught him, like, he's just a very righteous person. And like, I just teach him, like, he doesn't understand when people do wrong things. My little one's a little bit more of that wild warrior spirit. He likes to test the boundaries and all that. So, I just taught my oldest, because he likes to there's a lot that they can learn as well. Like, learning, like, he learned how to, he's learned how to do Rubik's Cubes, beatboxing, like all this stuff. And he likes to like look at crafts and sometimes. And so I know that he's like, I'll teach him how to like, curate his feed. I'm like, look, honestly, just don't engage when you see something that you don't like. Don't engage with it. Eventually it won't pop up. You can block things. And so teaching them too, just how to navigate, because really these platforms will still give you what you want either way. Because you can actually, there's so much out there.
It can be a beautiful thing.
It can be a nice thing where they're learning, a lot of cool stuff, and giving them those tools as well when they're getting to self-regulate.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like, it's so true about how they're different, because the younger one, we've kind of like trained him. I'm like, I don't want him to hear, but like he's very mindful of the way he does it is like, how old do I have to be to watch this? Or can I do this? So it's like, he'll just ask. And I'm like, that's good enough for me because that's mindful.
Yeah, we'll be like, okay, well, let's see what it's all about. Let's do some research and find out, you know?
Oh, wow, that's good. I like that.
But, we've been so lucky we created a culture in our neighborhood that is basically, if you were to drop us in 1990 or 1985, it would be very similar because we started we're
all about the play outside life.
Like go outside, be outside.
Yes.
And now the neighbors are doing it too. Like the neighbors
we don't even see them on Saturday sometimes. Like they'll just be in our house and then they're gone and then they're in the neighbor's house. You know how it is, like when we were kids, like they're just like in and out, riding bikes in the neighborhood. And
that's the best way to have them learn to socialize and learn all of those social cues. That's where the kids learn it.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to take charge of that. Like when we moved in the neighborhood, like not everybody was comfortable, but we're just those people. We're like, hey, we'll go meet the parents, you know, and build that relationship so that, and then, you know, it's a slow process, even if they have to trust, because it is a problem. Like kids are inside, they're on their devices. They don't even want to go outside sometimes. So yeah, just fostering that and encouraging those things. So,
yeah. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit more. You know, you mentioned, and I think this is where we're coming back to it. You know, you mentioned how the mental health needs of students have been rising even before COVID. And you found that proactive solution for children in school. So can you tell us about that? Is that similar to what you were talking about before with the activities for the parents?
No, so this is a little different. So of course I thought I'm in a public school and I thought it would take a lawsuit for the state and the district to finally put more supports in place for kids. Unfortunately, that's kind of how things happen when you're like, why don't we have more help for kids? And so I was internally frustrated with that. And then one day, 3 years ago, my school counselor was like, my daughter goes to the neighboring school to ours and they have a mindfulness coach. Like, we got to get one of those here. So I'm like, okay, we'll figure out what we need to do. And we put a couple grants together, put some money together and piloted it in our first grade for 6 to 8 weeks. Well, one of the teachers was like, what is this? Why are we doing? You know, they were really skeptical, which it's totally fine. We all have our different thoughts of things that we haven't experienced a lot of yet. Right. And, so this coach came in, she taught the kids, like I was saying, to be aware of your senses. She would bring a little chime. They would just sit still, look down at the floor if that was more comfortable for them, or close their eyes. And they slowly built their time up to like sometimes 2 minutes. These kids could sit in complete quiet. It was just, I was amazed. And she does these little lessons. It's through Mindful School. So it's a whole program that is sort of structured and where they train the teachers. Well, at the end of this program, the teachers were like, I'm doing this with myself and my kids at home. Like they had completely done a 180. Parents were like, what are you teaching my kid? My kid's coming home teaching their sibling these breathing practices, the ball breath. Like, who does that? You can't even get a kid to tell you what they learned in school that day, let alone them offer on their own. And all of a sudden I was like, what's going on here? And then our building team, our building leadership team, we discussed it over the summer and really put a chunk of our building budget into hiring her to come and teach all the classes and the grades for this 8-week period the following year. That was the year that COVID hit in the spring.
Oh my gosh.
We had trained everybody
lucky.
Right before. I know the timing of this was just amazing. Well, then I offered the course to my teachers to take, whoever wanted it, and about 7 of them, including me, because my kindergarten teacher was actually the one really spearheading this. And she's like, you should really take this, Karin. And I'm like, okay, fine. Well, I actually loved it. And then she and I went on and took the educator course to learn the lessons because I was like, if I can continue this with the kids, might not be able to pay her to come back. But if they've all learned it, maybe I can learn and I can just keep it going. Well, then she did a survey for the 2nd through 5th graders. 40% of the kids reported that it helped them sleep better at night. Are you kidding? If I can help one kid sleep better, I'll do whatever I can do. 1% of them thought it should be taught to other kids. 1% of them said it helped them calm down. It helped them on their taking a test because she gives them a strategy to use when you hit a problem you don't know. Take a deep breath, take 3 deep breaths, and then come back to it. And kids were self-reporting that how this worked for them. And that's when the light bulb went off for me. And I was like, I've been waiting for someone to come in and do something. this is the proactive thing. We've got to start teaching all kids to keep them from needing the therapy that we're saying we don't have enough therapists for, actually, on one hand. So it was amazing to me. And I was like, I have to commit myself to this because I have seen the proof is in the pudding, and kids self-reporting it. So then here you go. I always tried to take a kid who was not the best behavior kid and find something they were good at and let them do that so everyone could see the positive side of them. And I got that from a book called Leader in Me. And there's schools who are Leader in Me schools, which I just love, by Stephen Covey.
Oh,
Stephen
Oh,
Covey.
I read his son's book.
Yes, he does the habits. He has the set. So he wrote a book called Leader in Me, and he talks about taking kids who are struggling and finding their strength, and then you expound on it and how there's leader in each side of us. Anyway, it totally syncs with what I believe about kids, you know. So this one kid, somehow, him and I started talking one day, a fifth grader, and he created a YouTube channel for my mindfulness work that I was doing with the kids. So he starts this channel for me. Of course, I don't know what I'm doing, but every fifth grader's like, oh my God, the principal has a YouTube channel. Like, my God, that's so cool. So it was the coolest thing ever. And then we got a video
amazing.
camera, and he started videotaping me doing some of the mindfulness lessons with the kids, because you tell parents you're doing it, but nobody really knows what you're doing, right? It's just like, oh, awesome. Oh, awesome. So that was the first YouTube channel I created, Mindfulness with Dr. J, which is still out there. And then COVID hit, and I ended up taking the classes to learn the lessons. And I started doing weekly announcements on videos to send out to the families with a little mindfulness practice in it. And I kept it going all summer long. And I'd never kept communication with parents all summer long. So it was just amazing to step out and step out and step out and step out, to the point where now I've built this website and I do this coaching at night. And I'm a parent's asked for me to do an after school program with the mindfulness. And if I do it live and on Zoom, I mean, I've got a family in Texas that I work with, and our kids could Zoom in if we were doing it. Like, we're just kind of going where it's leading us. And yes, it's so powerful. So I'm trying to think of the first question that you asked me, which sent me on this, how our mindfulness started at our school, maybe, right? Or how this journey started for us.
Yeah.
And actually, here's a book that I wish I could get for every kid in the world, that really started us with some positive affirmations work before we even got into the mindfulness. It's called I Think I Am by Louise Hay. And if anyone knows Louise Hay, she's all about positive affirmations for adults as well. But in the story, she takes very ordinary situations with kids. Like, have you ever wished you looked different or more like someone else? Well, who hasn't? And you might feel like saying, man, my hair doesn't look like hers. I wish it was like hers. And it gives you a flip of a positive affirmation. You know, I love myself just the way I am. Wow, that's so powerful. So I would read this to kids to help them, because we all have that little critical thought. You know, we're our worst critic. We all know that about ourselves. But what is anybody teaching us and our kids how to move through that and pull through that? So this book, I Think I Am, is like my favorite book that I need to do something so that I can start funding it for every kid, every mom who comes with a child out of a hospital, like gift them this book or something, because it just has just revolutionized our world.
Amazing. And well, speaking of that and that positive affirmation, I love that you were at this point, because I got to get back on that with my boys, because even they told me, like, Mom, I had such a better day when I started my day with those positive affirmations, you know, especially my oldest, he deals a little bit like, you know, poor thing, he's just such an angel. But he sometimes will say like negative things about himself, like because he's, you know, he can be a little bit like clumsy or whatever. And he'll like really get down on himself. And so it really helps him. So I would love to know, what is your favorite affirmation?
Okay. So I learned this one. I think I learned it from Louise Hay, and it's, I am safe in the universe, and all life loves and supports me. Life loves me. And it's so funny, because literally one time in traffic, when I was running out of gas and the traffic wasn't moving, and you get that feeling of like, oh my God, I'm going to get stuck here. Like, stupid thoughts come up, and I literally thought I wasn't going to make it. And I was like, I've never run out of gas. Like, but still that weird, like, pressure, fear thought was there. And I literally said this affirmation out loud over and over, and it pulled me out of that fearful. Oh my gosh. My heart was, even physically, my heart was pounding. Like something was going to, like, I was really going to get stuck on the side of the road and not make it through. And so, that's my favorite one. Sorry, I was a little choppy with it, but, I am safe in the universe and all life loves and supports me. Life loves me. And all of a sudden when I say it, I just like stand up taller.
I love it.
And I love that because
Yeah.
honestly, we do see that play out sometimes, you know. What I do for work really is I have like a huge team of girls, and it's like a leadership thing, so I'm, you know, mentoring all these girls, and it's like that, it is that self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's like, you know, when you're constantly thinking that those bad things are going to happen to you, I'm like, they do.
It's gonna
I'm
happen.
like, you know what I mean? I'm like, you have to literally, like, it's like, I'm a huge believer in that. Like, I never get sick. And I tell people, I'm like, that's because I don't believe that I'm not going to get sick. Like as soon as I feel anything, I'm like, oh no, my body, I'm healthy. I'm strong. I fight everything. Like, this is what I tell myself. I'm like, you have to,
Yes.
It's so powerful.
And someone told me something once, where thoughts go, energy flows.
She
That's my
actually
favorite
just
quote.
presented on that.
That's actually my favorite quote. I can pull up
I
a
was
presentation.
like,
I just did a presentation about that.
She just presented on that.
I love it. Where your
powerful.
focus
That
goes,
is-
your energy flows. I tell my girls that all the time because we're like launching a website. The website crashes and it's like, oh, and I'm like, you girls, where your energy goes, where your focus goes, your energy flows. Like, just focus on what you can work with. We could still do
What you
this.
want.
We could
How
still
about
do
playing the game? What do I want?
Yeah.
What do I want?
Yes.
What do I want? We're so full of the lack and this and that and
Yeah.
I didn't. I can't.
Yeah.
Well, what do I want? What do I want? What if we played that game?
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm going to be that guy and bring, like, I don't know why it's controversial, but I'll bring the Bible into a conversation totally unrelated. But it's everything in this world is voice activated.
No, it's true.
So like God said, let there be light. And when there's like speaking in these situations where they said something or they heard something
Everything
and
is
then they
empowered.
saw.
The
So,
mouth.
you know, it's like, don't focus on what you're seeing or what you're
Yeah.
thinking about something. Really like speak over these things, you know?
Yeah, and have faith. Have faith.
Yeah. That's
And sometimes
so
all you have to do
important.
is look back.
Yeah.
You know, like look back on those times that you did think it was
Yeah, we call
over.
that's
You know?
reaching into the cookie jar.
Yeah,
like David Goggins
like
says.
remember that other time I totally thought I was gonna die and all this and not make it, and you know,
And I didn't.
and then I
And you
was
did it.
fine. You know, like you almost have to
Yeah.
play out that worst case scenario to see that it's not like, well, oh, okay, what's the worst case, right? Like
Yeah.
it's still, I'm not gonna be on the street or
Well,
whatever.
I wrote on the faculty lounge little whiteboard, most of the things you worry about never end up
No,
happening.
never. It's all in your head.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And I think there's like an actual statistic about the average person has, I don't even know, it's like
80,000
80,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are negative. So it's like it's just
Yeah,
like our
it's our negative bias.
our
We
survival
just-
mechanism. And so it's us against
is.
us and our brain, and just, getting out of that fear,
Yeah.
fear state.
That's right.
Well, I love it. I think
I love this.
some of the things that I took away from this conversation, number one, I love this quote, Viktor Frankl. I don't know if you know, he was
Yes.
World War II, you know, he
Yes.
talks about between stimulus and response, there's a space. So
There's a
create the space. And like with a young child, sometimes they're like, I don't know how to breathe. I don't know how to calm down. Well, you can flip it around and say, can you get really, really crazy? Like, can you hyperventilate?
Yeah, hyperventilate.
Okay, if you can hyperventilate, now show me how to do that the opposite way.
Yeah.
So that's something that I had to do with Desmond, you know, with our older.
Yeah, because he gets like real
Yeah.
up there. Yeah.
So there's that. I would say the other thing is, you know, definitely teaching them how to speak over things. And sometimes it has to start with the outward behavior because the inner behavior is more subtle, you know, and you have to like being mindful of your thoughts is difficult even for adults. But there were so many. And then of course, any parent who's, you know, this is leading to my last question. Any parent who's listening to this or any educator, administrator, you know.
I remembered who it was, by the way, Marcella.
Marcella, what did she say?
No, like the other person, I feel like she would love what she does.
Oh,
So
yeah. We'll
I'll
have
send
to
you her
introduce you to a
contact.
bunch of people. Yeah.
Yeah. She's
Because
really good.
definitely
High impact.
high impact. What is it? High impact club. Yeah.
Yeah.
She just talks about, you know, looking at these things from a different perspective, and it's
Yeah,
amazing.
like that. Behaviors are just their way of expressing an unmet need. And she deals a lot with like toddler moms, you know, especially with toddlers. It's like, you know, these are what you're seeing is just so primal. It's like
Oh my gosh.
like your child's emergency is not your
and
emergency.
we dealt with this with I remember my mom just mentioned this
like,
the other day.
Are we going to have our tantrum too?
I'm like, you don't remember with Desmond, because Desmond was wild kid, but wild high energy.
Yeah, just
and
high
I'm
energy.
like, Mom, that's age appropriate, okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
And then like she literally, I don't know if you remember this. The other day, she just commented like, I don't know what happened. He just all of a sudden, he just calmed down. And I'm like, Mom, we told you that was going to happen. We told you that was age appropriate behavior.
Oh my goodness.
Like
3. Oh
and
my
remember,
gosh.
They forget.
Yeah. And we used to,
so long ago.
We used to be like, I can't wait till this happens because we're going to rub it in their faces. I know it's wrong, but like, it's
now we don't, but then now we don't.
Yeah. Now we don't. So, okay.
Like,
So I think this is the most important question because, definitely we see the value in what you're doing. And also just, we want to call people to action to replicate this, bring this up, because it all comes back to, again, we got to put in the work. If we want to see things change, it always comes down to us. It's never somebody in Washington, D.C. or somebody far away. It's never that. It's always what's happening here on the ground. So
home.
Yeah, where can people find out, more about you and what you're doing? Where can people find that online?
So if it's easier to remember my podcast name, Momnificent, because in everything on that podcast, you'll find links to my website. And probably the biggest thing I would encourage people is if you go to my website, you get my first 3 steps to happy, healthy kids. It's a free video series that actually takes you through step by step what I went through on this call. And then that puts you also in my email list so that you can be aware of the next mindfulness lessons we're going to do with kids, or the parent groups that we're putting together. I'm going to put together a Momnificent mastermind group. And it's just bringing moms together who are like, yes, please teach me. Let me try this. Like, I need tools. I need tricks. And give me the opportunity to go home, try it out, come back, bring the situation. And it's not just me with all this information. It's actually just coming together, bringing together our information together, because we can learn from each other. And I'm just seeing the value and how much women want that. And it's been really fun putting that together.
Yeah, that's
wonderful.
awesome.
Yeah, we'll definitely plug all of those things in, make them all links so that people can easily access them. And we love having this conversation.
Yeah, this is
we
great.
can talk about this all day. We love this.
I could just go on and on.
I know. Thinking the same.
Yeah, now we're gonna probably have to put some things into practice while we go to the roller skating rink. So it's perfect.
For sure, my boys are gonna probably argue about something. You know how they are. Oh my gosh, these boys, like they.
Yep.
They're wild.
And here, I'll leave you with one phrase that Dr. Stuart Ablon, who I learned this approach from out of Harvard, has this whole tagline, and I believe it to my core, and I'll continue saying it, is kids do well if they can. Kids really do well if they can. And if they can't, it's up to us to find out what's really going on, because kids want to do well. And I that is the premise I work off of with every kid I come in contact with.
I love it. It reminds me of another one because I love taglines. I'm such a sucker for these because they're quick. I can pull from them. And crap, now I'm forgetting what it was. I'm trying.
Which one?
Tell me the one that you just said.
Kids do well if they can.
Oh, assume positive intent.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yes, that.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's another.
We just wrote that across our forehead.
It made me think of that because sometimes we don't. We're assuming the worst, and we don't want that in ourselves. And like, those are our kids. Like, are they really the worst? No. So, exactly when they are acting in any way, like first assume positive intent, and that's just I wanted to share that because that reminded me of that, and that's one of those things that I pull from.
And that's what we want anyone to do with us.
Yeah, exactly.
And how do we miss that sometimes when it's because we take offense, we take it personally, we got to let all that stuff go and just be like, okay, what's really going on here?
Yeah.
Love it.
I'll seriously, the assume positive intent.
Yeah.
It's what I've been saying to people recently is,
even with each
how
other,
could you possibly ever ascribe intent to someone? You really can't.
Yeah,
it's
so tough.
Like it's
not fair.
You can judge someone by the fruits, by their actions.
Yeah.
But really, the intent is so hard to judge. So
especially like how everything is like online now, it's so easy to
misread things.
Well, you
misread things and be mean to people.
You write something in an email and it comes out.
Totally
I do not respond to emails. I pick up the phone because the minute I write it, I know it's going to come across a different way, and that's never my heart.
Yeah, that's true.
And parents will even say, I can't believe you picked up the phone and called me. and they appreciate it every time. I always tell
and
my
sometimes
teachers,
it's not
they're
you, it's the
comfortable with
person,
it.
like the way they're reading it.
But I
Maybe they
tell
had a
them.
bad day, so they're reading it a certain way.
Oh yeah, in their moment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Dr. Jakubowski, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
This was so awesome.
Yes.
So
This was
great.
so
We're
fun.
excited for
Thank
this to come
you
out.
guys.
Thank you.